what the Trump administration is doing is trying to plug the holes, in particular by putting pressure on India. Do I think it's going to work? Probably not. And we have seen already very negative reaction from the Indians, who, of course, will not want to bow down to this kind of pressure.
President Trump is speaking to Volodymyr Zelensky right now after a 3-hour meeting in Moscow between Steve Witkoff, the US envoy, and President Putin. The American deadline by which Russia must agree to a ceasefire is Friday, with the threat of secondary tariffs looming large. Indeed, the US has already imposed an extra 25% tariff on India, who continue to import Russian oil. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has told the press that he's spoken to Steve Witkoff and that hopefully there will be some announcement soon. We're really trying hard to get information for you this afternoon, but it's a little thin on the ground at the moment. Let's have a listen to Trump's former national security advisor, Fred Fleitz, who's defending how long it's taking Steve Witkoff and the US to actually make a breakthrough.
But I think we need to realize that peacemaking is hard. This is a hard conflict. There was a lot of baggage President Trump inherited from Joe Biden. Our relations with Russia was terrible. This may take some time, but the door is still open to negotiations. And I'm hoping the pressure on Putin from these oil sanctions will make a difference.
Well, of course, we'll bring you updates as we get them. Now, let's bring in some of our experts to understand where we are at as a result of, well, the diplomacy, potentially, of the day. Let's start with Catherine Philp, the Times World Affairs editor, who joins us from Kyiv. Catherine, good afternoon.
Hi, Callum.
Really good to speak to you. So no concrete details as yet. Should there be any reassurance in the fact this 3-hour meeting between Witkoff and the Russians happened at all?
It is the fourth time it's happened since Trump took office, and we haven't got very far the last 3 times. So I would be conservative about how much of a breakthrough there will be. There were 2 hours between Putin and Witkoff, one-on-one, and another hour with the Russia's sovereign wealth fund manager, which points to, I think, a continued desire of the Americans to do business with Russia. But as you noted there, the one thing that we have got so far out of this, and perhaps we'll learn more after this phone call with Zelensky, the one thing we have got out of this quite unanticipatedly was that this sudden announcement of another 25% tariff on India because of its purchase of Russian oil. Now, this follows Trump already having slapped 25% tariffs on India. They aren't, this next round are not due to come into effect until August the 27th, but if they do come into effect, they will make India the most heavily tariffed country by the Trump administration. And one wonders with that delay whether there's some wiggle room in which Trump thinks that he can lure the Indians into some sort of deal. But it's very interesting that they are the first ones to kind of get thumped with this, despite the fact that the preamble leading up to the executive order about the tariffs was all about the actions of the government of the Russian Federation being an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. So, clearly this is about the economic relationship between India and Russia. What we don't know yet is whether Russia's going to be punished, or whether India's kind of taking the fall.
Yeah, and India's taking the fall actually before Trump's deadline, which is Friday. So I'm trying to understand the timeline of this. Does that make sense to you?
It doesn't really, no. It's really weird, and I think it is. I think we have to see it as caught up in the larger kind of Trump trade wars, because I think we've seen that, just as he threw a lot of sanctions around in his first term in office, and he seems less keen on those now, and he's decided that tariffs are the new toy to pressure people into doing what you want. So that's what it's about. And I mean, he used the threats over trade to get India and Pakistan to sort of lay off their escalating conflict a couple of months ago. So I sort of see it in that context. I just don't see any clarity as yet, really, about what is coming out of the direct talks between America and Russia, and whether the needle has moved at all on Russia making any concessions, or whether Trump is actually going to go for them with some kind of sanctions. He's already signaled. He said he was asked about sanctions yesterday, and he said, "Well, there will be sanctions, but they seem pretty good at avoiding them. Oh, they're a bit wily." Now that sounded to me a little bit like, preparing for perhaps that he may be looking to something other than sanctions to bring Russia to heel if they don't do what he wants by Friday.
Yeah. Catherine, thank you for your analysis. We're awaiting more details, which we will build more analysis from when we can. But for now, that is Catherine Philp, who is the Times World Affairs editor, speaking to us from Kyiv. Next then to Dr. Sergey Radchenko, professor at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies and author of To Run the World, the Kremlin's Cold War Bid for Global Power. Dr. Radchenko, good afternoon.
Hi.
Thanks very much for speaking with us. Is this another classic Putin delaying tactic? Yeah, sit around for a few hours chatting to the Americans and then carry on as if it never happened.
Absolutely. Putin is currently making progress on the battlefield, and he wants to string the Americans along. He has been very successful at doing this. He's been doing this for months now, promising to the Trump administration that, yes, of course, Russia is ready to talk. Of course, Russia is on the verge of signing a peace agreement if only its conditions were fulfilled. And look at those Ukrainians, they don't want to fulfill the Russian conditions. And you would expect that this same message was read out to Steve Witkoff, this time in the Kremlin.
Yeah. In terms of what Catherine was saying there, that actually the US seems to be approaching this as more of a kind of economic diplomatic effort with Russia than anything that might resemble peace or be in the interest of Ukraine. Would you agree with that? Is this quite a self-interested Trump manoeuvring?
Well, what I see here is a focus on economic measures to try to put pressure on Russia. How effective are those measures? We've had 3 years of sanctions on Russia. Russia is the most sanctioned country in the world at the moment, but there's still some areas where I guess you could try to apply more pressure. And of course, what the Trump administration is doing is trying to plug the holes, in particular by putting pressure on India. Do I think it's going to work? Probably not. And we have seen already very negative reaction from the Indians, who, of course, will not want to bow down to this kind of pressure. And they have a point. They have a point. And of course, India is not even the main importer of Russian oil. It's China. China is the main importer of Russian oil and gas at the moment. And, Trump is not currently looking at imposing major secondary tariffs on China. So it's hard to see how this is going to succeed, frankly.
Right. India's response to this has been to say that the tariffs are unfair, unjustified and unreasonable. It's worth noting, actually, that President Trump did this by virtue of executive order just a couple of hours ago, this 25% tariff. He said he believed declining global energy prices could pressure Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine. That's what Trump thinks. What do you think?
Look, obviously Russia needs money to fight the war in Ukraine. Most of the Russian budget comes from the sale of oil, less from gas, mainly from oil. So it is very important. However, the oil market is a tricky thing, right? Russia is contributing to the oil market. If you try to keep that oil from the market, then oil prices could go up, and the oil that Russia does manage to sell on the market, it gets more money for. So we have been facing this now for years. That's why we try to, we, the West, try to come up with price cap policy in December 2022. Has it worked? A little bit. Russia has not got as much money as it would have got otherwise, but Putin has still been able to continue his war of aggression. So it is just a very, very tricky market, and it is a very tricky thing to deal with or to sanction Russia. don't think we can expect any immediate results, but yes, over many years, this will contribute to pressure on Putin to desist from this kind of forms of aggression.
Dr. Radchenko, thank you for your thoughts this afternoon. That's Dr. Sergey Radchenko, professor at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. He also wrote To Run the World, the Kremlin's Cold War Bid for Global Power.